And welcome back to the Financially Simple Experience. So friends, every day it seems like I turn the news on and I see this word inflation. Not in my lifetime have I seen this word so much. Now, I've talked about inflation. I've dealt with it. I've written about it. I've done it from an academic standpoint, but I've never really experienced inflation as all of us are right now. Just the other day, my wife and I went to our local grocery store and we purchased some bacon. I love me some bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. I also like bacon and grits and eggs in the morning time. I love some bacon. And oh my goodness, the cost of bacon. Wow, it was expensive. But it's not just food. We're seeing an inflationary impact in our power bills. We're seeing inflationary impact in the price for our gasoline at the pump. It seems like every time we turn around, inflation is popping its ugly head out at us. It really is a nemesis, an enemy to wealth creation. But as business owners, we're not just facing inflation at home. It's not just hitting our personal checkbooks. It's also directly impacting our day-to-day operations of our business. As I sit down with clients day in, day out, as I talk with business owners, as I'm out speaking and I hear questions from the audience, one of the things that keeps coming up is, how do we deal with inflation? And I've heard the question a number of different ways, but perhaps the single best question I've heard as of late is, hey, Justin, how can business owners increase their profit during inflationary times? So I want to dive into that particular question today. There's some research I want to share with you that we could deploy in our businesses today and directly impact our businesses and ultimately the profit margin we have. Well, before we get there, we need to look at things as they stand today. So at the end of June 2022, the annual inflation rate for the United States was 9.1%. That is huge. In fact, in my lifetime, I was born a few years before November of 1981, but in November of 1981, it was the last time that we saw an annual increase greater than the 9.1%. So it's almost safe to say in my lifetime, we have not seen inflation move at this capacity. In fact, since April of 2021, it's been a 5% year-over-year increase every month when we track the producer price index, or what we call the PPI. Inflation is drastically changing the very nature of our business. We're having to deal with supply chain disruptions, labor shortages, rising energy cost. We're dealing with so many different things right now that are a result of movement in the inflationary numbers. But one thing that is directly impacting us as business owners is our loss of profit and our decreasing margin. Our margins are eroding every single day. So what do we do about it? The Harvard Business Review did a study back in 2008 where they looked at recessionary trends or times whenever inflation impacted us. And they did a study with 5,700 global companies. And in this study, it really reveals how big companies dealt with inflationary times or recessionary times. We can apply the same thinking in our own businesses. So here's a few points that we might consider. The first one is we must be vigilant and agile. Every single day, we have to keep our thumbs or our fingers on the pulse of our business. We have to know what is our operating cost. We have to know what's in our reserves. We have to prepare daily for the unexpected. Think about it. When's the last time you went to place an order for a product or a service or a good that you're going to need to produce your widget? And it has drastically increased. I was talking with a dentist. I love working with dentists. I have a few lifetime legacy clients that are dentists that I helped them buy their practice over a decade ago, or I helped them start their practice over a decade ago. And I love watching their businesses excel. But as of late, we've been watching certain materials that they would use in their dentistry practice increase drastically, like double in price. If your finger is not on the pulse of your company, you may miss this one particular adjustment within your business and not be able to move fast enough to keep your margins in place. Well, that leads us to number 2. We can adjust our pricing. On this particular dentist, we were looking at the cost of movements in the composite world that he was dealing with, and we began adjusting the prices that they charge for their service under that particular issue. In fact, in the last fiscal year, we've had 3 price adjustments, increasing their fees. So one of the things you can do is whenever you're going through high inflationary movements, you can increase your fees. We deal with this oftentimes whenever we'd see prices at the pump increase for certain trades. So, for example, many of you know that I ran a landscape company, and landscape companies use a lot of fuel. We use a lot of fuel in mowers and tractors and weed eaters and blowers. We use a lot of gas. They're running all day long, every day. And whenever gas prices would spike up, we would adjust our pricing in order to offset to keep our margins in place. Now, many people do not like increasing prices. Obviously, the pro of increasing prices is we keep our margin rates in check as our cost of goods move within the volatility of whatever it is, a month or quarter or whatever. One of the cons of increasing prices is we're always concerned that we're going to lose customers. I got to tell you, friends, the older I get and the more I become ingrained in business, I don't want to win on price, nor do I want to lose on price, but I will lose on price every single day of the week. I've got to that point. If someone thinks they can find somebody to do it cheaper and they're going to do it as good as a legacy or established company, have at it. So it depends on where you're at in your business cycle. You may be in the business world right now and you're like, dude, if they can fog a mirror, I want to work with them. Well, you might want to be concerned about adjusting prices. But nonetheless, you can raise your prices to help offset inflation. But perhaps one area that we often don't focus on, and that is controlling our spending. So I want to dive into controlling our spending during inflationary times a little bit more. Of course, I can tell you cut cost. You've heard me talk about 5 by 5 by 5. We want to increase our top line revenue by 5%. We want to decrease our SG&A, or sales and general accounting expenses, by 5%. And we want to increase our margin by 5%. So we want to increase by 5, decrease by 5, increase by 5, 5 by 5 by 5. But let's dive into specificity here. So one of the things we can do if we're going to control cost is we can differentiate between strategic and non-strategic spending. So what is strategic spending? Perhaps, just maybe, you have been working to develop some IP. Maybe you have a particular process that sets you apart from another company. Maybe you have some intellectual property that you put into writing in a marketing format. Maybe you're developing some sort of a new breakthrough technology that can drastically revolutionize your particular industry. Okay. Well, a strategic spend would be protecting all that hard-earned capacity through perhaps patent or copyright laws. So that's protecting IP. That's strategic spending. Or maybe, just maybe, you're reached a point in your business where you need some outside consultants. You know how I feel about outside business consultants. I've worked with them for years. I currently use consultants. I currently am a consultant. I work with consultants in our company, in our business advisory division. So using the services of an outside consultant to help you during tough times of business could be a strategic expense. Now, on the other hand, there are non-strategic expenses, and they could include a plethora of things. So, for example, you may want to buy something very nice, a new desk, a new piece of equipment, a premium offering. I remember during the COVID crisis, it seems like this was yesterday, that we had the toilet paper crisis. I mean, no one could get TP. It wasn't anywhere on the shelves in the United States. No longer were we worried about the aloe-infused Charmin Ultra. I mean, come on. We were willing to go out and get the roughest toilet paper we could find just to have toilet paper. Now, I get it. That's an extreme situation, but is it really? If we're going through inflationary times in our business, we want to almost take a look at every single offering we have. And if it doesn't impact the quality or the service that we offer our clients, then is it possible that we could find maybe not the best of the best product, but maybe one down from it? Maybe instead of buying that premium brand of coffee that you flew in from Nicaragua, you actually go down and you get you some, as I call it, stump water coffee. You get you some coffee that, I mean, a spoon can stand up in it. Now, again, that's just an extreme, but you get the point. There are things that we don't have to spend money on in our business. And when we're going through inflationary times, those are the times we want to be very stingy, want to be very, very protective of our resources. As we're looking at controlling the cost of our business, another thing we can deal with is accurate accounting and controls with inventory. In the Harvard Business Review study that I mentioned earlier, they discovered that one particular company was able to save $300 million in annual cost by simply empowering a, quote, spending czar. That's right. If you wanted to buy something for this company, you had to get it approved by this particular person. What it did was it broke down the silos within the organizations and it allowed all the purchasing to come to one location. So you're a small business. Maybe now's the time to start limiting your credit card usage or the amount that your team can spend on their credit cards and bring it to your CFO, to your chief operating officer, to maybe you as the business owner, and put the company in a very frugal posturing in terms of expenses. Another thing we can do is we can use the efficiency of technology. Believe it or not, technology saves us money. Automation. Man, automation has come so far. I remember when I first came into business that I wanted to automate certain things where you can create the widget, the process, or the development one time and allow it to work thereafter. I can remember when automation hit the sprinkler industry and we could automate the way that certain sprinklers would work. We could isolate it based on rain, we could isolate it based on sun, and we could create automation within the sprinkler industry. This seems like an eternity ago, but I can remember that happened. And what it did was it saved cost. It saved labor costs. It saved energy costs. It was more eco-friendly. Automation. Another thing we can use is robotic processes. I was reading recently of a Taco Bell that is 100% robotic. Think about that. 100% robotic. Making burritos for Taco Bell. Now, you may have an opinion. I could make a couple fun comments there, but nonetheless, automation does help us increase efficiency. There's one thing that I've learned in the industry, and that is, as we're trying to drive efficiency, especially with money, we want to focus on our highest and best use. Highest and best use. Dan Sullivan, with the strategic coach, made that term famous. If you never checked out his work, please do. It's very, very valuable. In other words, what is it that you or your team or your customer or your vendor or the system, the structure, whatever it is, what is the highest and best use for profitability? Here's an example. Chick-fil-A and Grubhub work together in a symbiotic relationship. Chick-fil-A does not want to be in the delivery service. They want to make chicken sandwiches. That's what they want to do. Yet Grubhub does not want to be in the chicken producing business. They don't want to make chicken sandwich. They want to deliver the sandwiches to the consumers. So by using their highest and best use and pairing those together in a symbiotic relationship, we now have profitability. We can increase margins. So where in your business can you team up with somebody, another company, another product, another service, a widget, a technology that will drive profitability using highest and best use methodologies? Another thing we can do to offset the impact of inflation is to prioritize high profit margin products. The products which drive the highest profit margins. Many hotels now offer by request housekeeping services. Think about this. Gone are the days whenever you would go out of the room, you're there for a week and you come back and you had daily cleanup. That actually became inefficient. If the sheets are clean and I sleep on them one time, there's no need to come into my room and change them if I'm going to be sleeping in the same bed yet another night. So hotels began trying to drive the profit margins through prioritization. So now they come in, instead of the traditional cleaning, they do a replenishing of the room. Another example of how a company has prioritized the high profit margin products is Oreo. Oreo has been working toward a goal of phasing out 1 out of every 4 product offerings since the early months of the pandemic. What they realized is they had too many product offerings out there that were not driving maximum profitability. And so now they see where their highest profit margin is. It's probably, if you want to know the truth, my opinion is probably the double stuffed Oreo. Just take it for what it's worth. But nonetheless, they're looking at which Oreo product is giving the greatest profitability, and therefore anything that's not there, they're trying to phase it off. Focus on the thing that works. And finally, consider the long-term effects of the changes, whether it be reducing cost, whether it be looking for efficiency, whether it be raising fees. But you've got to consider the long-term effects of the changes before you implement them. We business owners can be a little bit hard-headed sometimes. I remember the first time that I watched my little boy, Jude, who's my youngest. He's kind of my hard-headed one. I think he gets it from me, if you want to know the truth. I can remember the first time I told him not to touch the fire. And yet, guess what he did? He touched the fire and he got burned and he cried, and I picked him up and I put ice on it. And I'm trying to, all those things that we've all experienced as parents. We business owners are often the same way. We'll hear a good idea, or we'll take a point from a podcast like this. That's a good idea, Justin. I never thought about using automation to end up reducing cost and drive margin. Okay, let's go automate things. But we don't stop long enough to figure out how it's going to impact us through the next economic cycle. Remember, the economic cycle is pretty simple. You begin with recession. Let's assume, we don't know at this particular point, but we could be in a recession right now as I'm recording this. So you begin with recession, and then after recession is completed, you go into recovery. In the market, the economy recovers to where it was, and then you go into expansion. And as the market expands, it gets overly inflated, then it goes into a recession, and then it goes into recovery and expansion. It's this very amazing cycle. One of the things we got to be careful of is the decisions we make today when we're facing inflation. How is it going to affect us in just a few years? For example, let's deal with staffing. How particular, if we were going to go out right now and drastically drive up staffing because we're concerned about people taking off work. I saw one company said, man, I can't get people to work 40 hours a week, so I'm just going to double my employment and have them all work part-time. Is that a good move? According to Gallup, the cost of replacing an employee can range from 1/2 to 2 times the employee's annual salary. So if a company has 100 people in the organization and they provide an average of $50,000, turnover could be catastrophic. It could cost $660,000 to $2.6 million per year. So if we jump out right now, like this one company did, and they said, hey, we're going to go from all full-time employees to part-time employees, and now the economic cycle shifts from a potential expansion to, let's say, a recession to a recovery, wherever it's at in there, how is this decision today going to impact us tomorrow? Friends, inflation is one of those things that we have to deal with it every single day, especially with times like we're facing right now. If you don't pull the right levers in your company, or you delay, or you pull the levers which are not going to drive profit, then you may find yourself in a position where you're working awful hard and making very little income. Hey friends, if that's you, may I introduce you to a business advisor? There are business advisors that I am personally working with. I'm teaching them processes that our advisory team is working together to collaborate to drive profitability and scalability, decentralization of the owners every single day. If that's you, hey, reach out. We can help you. Yes, friends, inflation is here. I hope it's not here to stay, but it is here nonetheless. And as business owners, we have to focus. We must. It's imperative that if we're going to weather this particular storm, this enemy of wealth creation, inflation, if we're going to weather this, if we're going to survive its attacks, it's going to require vigilance. I hope this today gives you some insight. I hope maybe it triggers something in your head that you can go back to your business and look at. Maybe it's a cost cut. Maybe it's a profitability maximization strategy, whatever it may be. I hope you can employ some of this. If today's episode was helpful for you, hey, please let me know. Drop us a comment. Leave us a review. It'd be very helpful for our particular podcast. Friends, like I say every week, life is hard. It is. But life is good. And we are so blessed. We are blessed. Man, we're blessed. Inflation is tough. It's tough. No one likes to deal with the results of inflation, but here we are. We're dealing with it. We can survive this. Let's continue to make our lives at least financially simple. Y'all make it a great one.